up without a mother. I watched her sitting there, exhausted and bald-headed, with her only hope of recovery dripping slowly into her veins. And then I thought of those 1,000+ cases of incredible radical recovery, which no one was investigating. Taking a deep breath, I looked into her eyes and said, "I don't know, but I'm going to try to find out for you." That was the moment I decided to continue on for my Ph.D. and dedicate my life to finding, analyzing, and yes, talking about cases of radical remission. After all, if we are trying to win the war on cancer, doesn't it make sense to talk to those who have already won? In fact, shouldn't we be subjecting these amazing survivors to numerous scientific tests and asking them every question we can think of in an attempt to find out their secrets? Just because we cannot immediately explain why something happened, it doesn't mean we should ignore it, or worse, tell others to keep quiet about it. The example I always use is Alexander Fleming, a scientist who chose not to ignore an anomaly. As the story goes, in 1928, Fleming came back from vacation to find mold growing in many of his petri dishes, which wasn't surprising to him given his long absence. He began sterilizing the dishes, figuring that he simply needed to start his experiment over. Thankfully, though, he decided to pause and take a closer look. And this is when he noticed that all the bacteria in one particular dish were dead. Instead of ignoring this anomalous dish and dismissing it as a fluke, Fleming chose to investigate the matter further, and doing so led him to the discovery of penicillin. This book shares the results of my ongoing research into the radical remission of cancer. It is the outcome of my decision not to ignore these anomalous cases, but rather do as Alexander Fleming did, take a closer look. However, I will first give you a bit of my own background, so you can better understand where I am coming from and what inspired me to dedicate my life to this topic. My story. My experience with cancer began when my uncle was diagnosed with leukemia when I was 3. His disease was a long, drawn-out process that lasted 5 years, casting a shadow over our family gatherings and making all of us young cousins incredibly afraid of that mysterious illness called cancer. He eventually died when I was 8, leaving my 9-year-old cousin fatherless. That's when I learned that daddies could die of cancer. A few years later, when I was only 14, a close friend of mine was diagnosed with stomach cancer just after our 8th grade graduation. In shock, our small Wisconsin town instantly rallied around him, boosting him up with numerous pancake breakfast fundraisers and hospital visits. Some of my friends were hopeful, but I couldn't ignore that feeling of dread deep inside my stomach. After all, I had seen this before. Following 2 long and side-effect-filled years, my friend died at the age of 16. Our entire community attended his funeral, and over the next few years, my other friends and I would go to his gravesite regularly to leave flowers. His death taught me that absolutely anyone could die of cancer, at any time. While earning my undergraduate degree at Harvard University, I was introduced to complementary medicine, yoga, and meditation for the first time. These strange practices and ideas made me start to question my previously held beliefs about the mind and body being separate, and I slowly began to practice yoga. 4 wonderful years later, my first job after Harvard was to co-author a book on global warming, and I suddenly found myself sitting behind a computer all day with none of the social interaction I had enjoyed during college. When a friend suggested that I address my isolation by volunteering, the first idea that popped into my head was to help cancer patients, no doubt because of my early experiences with it. I still remember my first day volunteering in the pediatric wing at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City. All I did was play Monopoly with some children who were receiving intravenous chemotherapy. But the depth of meaning I felt by helping them forget about their disease for a few hours was truly life-changing. I knew I had found my calling, and after a few more weeks of volunteering,